Hi there, everyone. It is Thursday, the 30th of April. You're watching CNN Money Switzerland. I'm Ana Maria Montero, and let's get started with those headlines this evening. We start right here in Switzerland, where the number of new coronavirus infections spiked again on Thursday. That's increasing by 179 compared with 140 the previous day and 100 on Tuesday. That's according to the latest figures from the Office for Public Health, who cautioned that these numbers can fluctuate on a daily basis. Over 29,500 people have now tested positive, and over 1,400 have died. Switzerland is offering up 400 million Swiss francs in the global fight against coronavirus. Half of this will go towards the International Committee of the Red Cross in the form of an interest-free loan, with the rest for the IMF and other international organizations. In a press conference today, Foreign Minister Ignacio Cassis said the funds will go towards assisting developing countries with the loss of jobs and forced displacement. Now, the Swiss government announced a host of changes to the country's lockdown exit plan yesterday. Among these was allowing restaurants to reopen as of May the 11th, but with certain conditions, including a maximum of 4 people per table. Industry bodies, including Gastronomy, have welcomed this step, which comes earlier than expected. But there's still a lot of uncertainty over how restaurants will fare running under these strict requirements. Earlier, I spoke to Rudi Bindella, the owner of the Bindella restaurant chains, to get his take.
Well, first of all, we're glad about this decision of the federal councils. It gives us planning security, and we also welcome the gradual relaxation. We're very pleased about this decision, and it underlines the importance of gastronomy. That's what we missed in the last decision of the Federal Council. Nevertheless, the strict regulations have a major impact on the numbers of seats and thus also on sales. The economic viability of location must be examined in detail. For us restaurateurs, therefore, the goodwill of the landlords regarding the commercial rents remains central. The limited capacities will result in a drop in sales.
All right, so this idea of having tables limited to 4 people, except for families, and having to place them 2 meters apart, I mean, how feasible is that for your kinds of establishments, and how do you see that strategy unfolding? Where would you start?
We're actually practicing, we're doing some tests in restaurants. The problem is that the exact regulations are not clear yet. We already did some simulations, and we got around 40 to 50% of the normal capacity. If we take the 2-meter regulation. One thing that is not clear yet are the separations between the tables, because the Federal Council made up an idea that it could be a solution to bring between the tables some separations. Of which material, how big they are, and so on, is not clear yet. So we are waiting on the details of these regulations. But also, this opportunity could be a ray of hope for gastronomy to enlarge the capacity of the restaurant.
And limited sporting activities will also be allowed from May the 11th, but also under strict guidelines. Our sports correspondent Matt Layton caught up with the president of the Neon Tennis Club. Let's take a listen.
Sporting activities are starting again in Switzerland. From yesterday's announcement by the Federal Council in Bern, as of the 11th of May, elite groups of athletes can meet together in small groups in facilities and train. Non-contact sports, again, can be practiced, also in very small groups or individually. Good news for golfers, where they can resume playing, again under very strict conditions. You arrive a few minutes before, you play your round, not competitions, unfortunately, and you leave as soon as you're finished. And the same thing for tennis. I actually caught up with Pierre-Alain Dupuis, who's the president of Neon Tennis Club, who's delighted about the opening possibilities.
It's a very good news from Bern today. It's a great relief, but our courts, our wonderful clay courts in Nyon are ready to be used, and it's going to be in 10, 12 days. But of course, we still have to be very careful about the measures, and Tessenio doesn't want to ignore the danger, because the war against the virus is not over. So, but I'm very happy we can play, because some people, some members, are a bit depressed. As sport is very important for the mental and physical wellness. So it's very good that we can play again.
I know you have I was there today. I know you have the restaurant. Is that going to be able to open?
The restaurant, as I heard, can be reopened as well, the 11th of May. So it means that the club will be open like before, of course, if we apply the restrictions.
For professional team sports, there's also light at the end of the tunnel. They can start training again from the 11th of May in groups, obviously very strictly supervised, and theoretically from the 8th of June, matches can be held behind closed doors, although this is to be confirmed on the 27th of May.
Wiping out now, global energy use has been dealt such a huge blow by the pandemic that it's like wiping out demand from all of India, a country of 1.3 billion people, and the world's third biggest consumer. That's according to the International Energy Agency, which said in a new report Thursday that demand for energy could crash by 6% this year if lockdowns persist for many months. The agency said the drop in demand will also result in a record annual decline in carbon emissions of almost 8%. ECB President Christine Lagarde today warned that the eurozone faces its worst slump in peacetime. The European Central Bank decided to keep rates unchanged, but launched new measures to support lender liquidity. Speaking at a virtual press conference, her comments came as new figures showed the eurozone economy shrank at the sharpest pace on record in the first quarter of the year. And with many European economies now taking steps to open up again and ease their lockdown, my colleague Olivia Chang spoke to Arnaud Berna-ert, head of global health at the World Economic Forum, on what the next phase of the fight against coronavirus will look like.
Yeah, we see at the forum, we see that this battle is going to be a three-phase battle. We have been through the flattening phase, flattening of the curve. There will be a fairly long fight period. That will be the period until the time we will have a vaccine. And then this will be the future, rebuilding health systems and learning from the crisis as we embed into health systems treatment pathways the best of what we learned during the crisis. Now, I'd like to focus on the fight period, because this is the one you are alluding to. I mean, to go into the fight period, you have actually to do a few things as you reopen your economies. The first thing, you need to have some degree of evidence that the level of transmission is controlled. And every country will have to define by their own standards what it is to be in control. It's a number of cases, it's a number of capacity available in hospitals in case of a rebound. We need to make sure that in those very special settings, like we have seen in senior living capacities, the risks continue to be minimized. And last but not least, we need to find ways for importation cases to continue to be managed. So I think those are the three conditions for reopening economies. And I think what I've seen happening in Europe is that governments are fairly rigorous about meeting the three conditions before reopening. And that's also what I see in Switzerland as the way the economy is being reopened is very gradual.
Arnaud, how can we prepare for this potential second wave at the same time when talking about easing of restrictions? How do we find that balance in the conversation?
I think it's about making absolutely sure that your health system capacity is up to speed. And when I'm thinking about the health system, it's not only in the context of COVID, it's also about all those COVID minus persons, the ones that don't have the disease but have all the things, and that we can't afford that those patients be left too long outside of hospitals when they are to be treated for chronic disease, including cancer, including cardiovascular disorders or diabetes. So I think the part of the answer is about totally understanding the demand and supply capability of your healthcare system in the response, and contact tracing. Absolutely, contact tracing will be extremely important. Diagnostics and testing strategies are going to be extremely important as well. So the capacity to ramp up massively the testing programs in tenfold what has been done before, and do the right contact tracing is going to be very, very important in the fight period.
From slumping sales and broken supply chains, the challenges facing companies in the wake of the pandemic are formidable. Many businesses will need to reinvent their strategy to survive in the new normal, so says Swiss entrepreneur Alexander Osterbalder, and one of the brains behind the highly successful management tool, the business model canvas. He talks to my colleague Hannah Wise about the 3 characteristics for success.
And by having this ability to constantly reinvent yourself, disruption becomes less of a problem. Now we obviously have a very big disruption, kind of an atomic bomb scenario. So companies who have this ability to explore and execute at the same time, they don't struggle as much with the circumstances now. Obviously, if you're in the travel industry or in tourism, it's a little bit harder, right? But companies that are good at exploring, are good at managing under uncertainty, they're obviously a lot more prepared for this kind of scenario. But it's in a very extreme one. It's probably the extremist form of disruption. And when we wrote the book, we didn't have such a scenario in mind. It's really a black swan. But I do believe that you can manage through a crisis like this, not just operationally, but also reinventing your business model in a very short amount of time.
I mean, what are some of the key characteristics then that you should have to weather such a storm?
Well, look, in general, we say invincible companies, they have 3 characteristics. The first one is they constantly reinvent themselves, even when everything goes well. And if you have that ability, guess what? When disruption hits, you're already ready because you're already working on a couple of things. That's number 1. Number 2, invincible companies, they have superior business models. They don't just compete on product, price, and technology. They actually have better business models than others. And the third one is they transcend industry boundaries. And all of that helps today, in this kind of environment. But if you know how to use these kind of tools, you're able to navigate uncertainty a lot better and faster. So that is the core skill. If you want, most companies are built to manage what they have. Very few companies, established companies, are managed to reinvent, to invent the new. That's the field of the startups. What turns out, the best companies should actually have both. They should have a mini Silicon Valley within and be good at managing.
A number of companies around the world have already begun human trials on possible COVID-19 vaccines, and one is a German company, BioNTech, which just completed the initial dosing of a small number of volunteers. CNN's Fred Pleiten reports from Berlin.
BioNTech is the only German company so far to have obtained regulatory approval to begin trials for possible vaccines against COVID-19. It's also one of only a handful of companies in the world to already be in clinical trials. Now, the company said on Wednesday that it had completed the first dosing of the new trial vaccine, which is called BNT162. The cohort for this first dosing was 12 people, and they are all now vaccinated. The company says in the second phase of the trial, they want to move to a larger cohort of about 200 people, ranging in ages from about 18 to 55. They want to test a lot of things in that second phase of the trial, but especially whether or not the trial vaccine is actually safe. Now, it's still unclear at what point in time this vaccine is going to be ready for general use, but on a global level, BioNTech works together with the US pharmaceutical company Pfizer, and both Pfizer and BioNTech have already said they also want to begin clinical trials in the United States, pending regulatory approval there, which they believe will happen very soon. Fred Pleitgen, CNN, Berlin.
As always, you can watch all of our latest coverage on cnnmoney.ch and stay in touch with us via all of our social media platforms. Thanks again for joining us. Do take care, and we'll see you right back here again next time.